Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining me again today. I'm Roxanne McCarty-O'Kane and this is the Phoenix Phenomenon. So each week we have a chat to some amazing people in the community that are out there doing incredible things, inspiring things, despite having overcome a lot of their own personal challenges. So today I have with me the beautiful Kim Morrison. She's a health and lifestyle educator and public speaker, an author, 2 books now, and a podcaster for Up for a Chat. So she's a bit of a Jill of all trades. She does some amazing work for the community. And she's also the founder of 28. So her latest book, The Art of Self-Love, there it is, just been reading it myself, was released probably a month or 2 ago now, so a recent release. And it really is a bit of a how-to guide for people to step into their circle of love, which is Kim's creation, which we're hoping to share a little bit about today. So thank you so much for joining us today, Kim. I've been chatting my head off here. Lovely to have you with us.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you, sweetheart.
Not a problem at all. So so I guess we'll start with the book. Obviously, that's one of your latest projects and the latest thing that you've brought out into the world. So I'd love to find out a bit more about the process for you in bringing that to life, because there's a lot in there that covers basically your life's journey as well as, you know, the things that you've discovered along the way.
Yeah, thank you. I think probably for me, it's been a book that's been in my heart for quite some time without realizing it. I knew there was a book I needed to write, but I didn't quite know what. And I guess for a number of years, because of my business and because of my love of essential oils and health and wellness, I was doing a lot of talks. And I just started researching and questioning how we all get through tough times. And I realized that most of us, we all struggle at different times in our lives. And so I started writing and researching, how do we get through those tough times? How do we pick ourselves up? How is it some people end up in a pity party for a very long time? Other people get better, not bitter. And I started really being interested in human nature, and probably have been interested in this for many, many decades. So then it really came to fruition about 3 years ago, when my beautiful 16-year-old at the time son arrived in my bedroom on the end of the bed. My husband and I, Danny, were just going off to sleep when Jacob walked in and just sat there and looked very broken and just said, "Mum, I'm a complete and utter F up." And there's a saying, you know, a mother is only as happy as her saddest child. And in that moment, I just felt so broken for him, because I knew he was struggling. He was on the verge of being kicked out of school. He'd done a couple of silly things, nothing too big, but just was beating up on himself hugely. And I just said to him, look, it's not that you're bad or you're a bad person. You've just, in my opinion, fallen out of love with yourself. And if I can show you a way, would you want me to help you get back in love with who you are? And he just looked at me and said, yes. So I got out a big book, the book that I've been keeping notes of for the last 3 years, and just opened it to a blank page. And I drew a big a big heart in the middle of the page with self-love written in the middle of it. And I said to him, you know, we all know that in order to feel great about life, we need to love ourselves. In order to love someone else, we need to love ourselves first. But often in life we fall out of love. And so I drew a big line coming out of it, down out of the circle. And I said, Jacob, you've just fallen out of the circle. And I said, but do you want me to show you how to get back? And he just looked at me and sort of said, yes. So the first words I drew to the top right of that was self-awareness. So awareness that you've fallen out of love, awareness that you're in a bad place, awareness that life sucks right now, and awareness that you're feeling helpless and hopeless. Now, the minute you're aware that you're in a bad place, you're actually not in the bad place anymore, because you're aware that life sucks. So you've actually got a much better, brighter awareness around your own management of those emotions, perhaps, or at least an awareness and an insight that life's not great. But I said the next step's really important, and that is self-care. So with awareness, we know we're not in a great place. We've got to now look after ourselves even more so. It's even more important that we take care of ourselves when we're not great. So for you, Jacob, I want you to aim to go to the gym every day, or at least go for a run every day. I want you to focus on using the oils in a bath every night. I want you to really look at managing your muscles and your mind and making sure we get good sleep and, all of these different things. And he was like, yeah. And then I said, the next step is self-discipline. No, so we're going to have to do this for the next 28 days. Nothing comes to us. Nothing is ever handed to us on a plate as such. If you want to be happy, you have to work at it. If you want to get better, you have to work at it. So the discipline, in my opinion, is one of the most important, profound parts of self-love. So for him, I said, for the next 28 days, you're not allowed to swear at a teacher. For the next 28 days, you have to apply self-care. For the next 28 days, I want you to have something green at every meal, or at least one meal a day. So, often when we don't feel great about ourselves, we tend to turn to junk food or eating on the run. And so often I feel like when we're not feeling great, the best thing to do is to make a commitment to ourselves that we will have a green smoothie or we'll have green vegetables every night with our dinner. It's simple. It doesn't have to be too involved. Now, the first 3 steps, in my opinion, are the doing. You have to do the work in order to have the next 3 steps become the being. So we do it and then we can become it. So when we have self-discipline, we then have better self-control. And I promised him that by doing 28 days of not swearing at a teacher, and every time he got that charge from a teacher or someone that annoyed him, I said, I want you to use 2 words, and that's just to turn around whenever someone charges you, is to say, that's interesting. And you're not allowed to say it with sarcasm, but just say that's interesting, because, Jacob, it is interesting that someone else sees the world with those eyes or that viewpoint. It's no good. It's not bad. It's just interesting. And so that was his discipline. And I said, with that, you will find if you do that for 28 days, you'll have better self-control. You probably won't want to swear. If you look after yourself well while we're going through this, and you are exercising every day and you are having something green, then I can promise you your self-control will be better, because your mind and your body will be operating at a higher resolution than what it would be if you were just compounding it with junk food and horrible messages. So self-control is really important. And by this stage, a sister had come into the room. I was sitting on the end of the bed as well. So the 4 of us were sitting there. And then I said to him, Jacob, when we have better self-control, we then have, and I wrote the words, more self-respect. Can you tell me what somebody looks like with self-respect? And he just sort of sat there looking around, and then Taylor just sort of piped in, who's 18 months older. And she said, I think someone with self-respect dresses like they care. They take pride in their appearance. She goes, I'm not saying they have to be in fashion designer clothes, but they have a certain way about them that shows that they care for themselves. She said, I don't think they gossip about other people or put people down. And she said, I think they have respect not only for themselves, but each other and the planet. And she said, and I certainly think that they have a way about them that shows that they do not get affected by other people's opinions of themselves, because they have such respect for themselves that they know that that's more about them than it is about themselves. And I just looked at her and I went, I think you've nailed that. And so I wrote that in the book. It was so that was the definition. And yet when I speak at different events and functions, and I ask my audience, what does somebody with self-respect look like? Everybody goes blank. It's the younger generation that often it's our kids or younger people that can give us the answer a lot quicker, because we've clouded it with an inability to understand what self-respect actually looks like. So then I said anyone with self-respect has an absolute amazing amount of self-acceptance. They'll accept themselves, warts and all. So that's the 6th and final step that leads into and feeds into the self-love circle. So I explained to them that, when we have self-acceptance, it means for you, Jacob, you can accept that you've made mistakes, but you can still love yourself. Or we can accept that we're having a bad day, but we can still love ourselves. Or we can accept the fact that we are brilliant at doing this and maybe not so brilliant at that. So it's very important to me. Self-acceptance is appreciating that we're not always at our best, but we can also truly accept who we are. And so I drew that, and I said to him, does that help explain why you've fallen out of the circle? And he just looked at me and he said, Mum, this is amazing. You have to get this out there. So I guess that's where I knew 3 years ago I was going to have to write this book. And And it was really my driver. Was my wish is that another mother and father out there don't beat themselves up for not doing a great job, or that a teenager doesn't turn to drugs or getting kicked out of school or giving up on themselves, or that we lose another beautiful life to suicide. I feel like by writing my personal story and by sharing my love of this work, if I could help one person realize that, then I really believe that my job would be done.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and it is a beautiful book. If you've pulled so many components in there together, it's really quite a powerful tool for people to use. So, and I imagine I'm going to be referring to it time and time again with the lists of oils for special, for the self-love and for getting yourself back into the circle. I think it's going to be really amazing. So thank you. And one thing I wanted to talk about with you is you mentioned it a few times in the book that self-care is not selfish, it's essential. And I wanted you to kind of expand a bit on that, because, a lot of people do have that feeling, and I don't know where it comes from, maybe you do, that taking the time to look after yourself is actually a selfish act rather than something that can, radiate out and help other people when you're in your best self.
I think what's interesting, here I am telling my son it's important to love himself and telling my daughter it's important too. Where yet at high school, if you recall, if anyone, that acted a certain way, you would go, oh, she loves herself.
Yeah.
And it was seen as a put down rather than a compliment. So there's something happens in our teenage years, or something occurs where loving yourself is almost seen as a bad thing. So I think it then transpires as parents and adults, and we go into our life and we're so used to giving to everybody else or helping everybody else that when we take a bit of time for ourselves, we feel a bit guilty. Now, I don't know if that's where it comes from or why that's where it comes from, but it's almost like in our society these days, to work hard, to be overwhelmed, overloaded, stressed, it's almost seen as a badge of honor that we carry it with pride, that we're working really hard, that we've earned this holiday, that we've earned this time out. And I think it's just a little bit distorted. And I think it's time that we realize that we would have even more to give if we, in fact, took a bit more time for ourselves. Now, here's the other thing. A lot of people seem to think that self-care costs a lot of time or takes a lot of money. But I'm not suggesting we have to spend a lot of time or money on taking care of ourselves. It could be a 10-minute bath of an evening. It could be an aromatherapy spritzer. It could be lighting your diffuser and putting some oils on. It could be making a green smoothie. I mean, there's so many beautiful different cost-effective ways that we can take care of ourselves that don't have to be money. So when I hear people say the two biggest excuses why they don't look after themselves, it's not the fact that they think it's selfish, it's usually time or money. Sure. So my argument to that is, well, I don't believe it's about time and money. I think it's actually about making it a priority. So whether or not it's a priority to you. So here's how you make it a priority. So let's say I'll ask people in my audiences, who's had a professional massage in the last 6 months? And very few people tend to put their hand up, and it gets less and less, as I say, by a month or by a week. So then I'll say, why don't you? And then I get the things, too much money or not enough time, or I don't like feeling greasy, or I've never had a massage, or I don't know. You'll get a whole plethora of excuses as to why they don't.
Yeah.
Then I'll say, I want you all to think about someone that you really love, or someone that you wish you could bring back that you may have lost even. I want you to think about someone that you really care about, and now their health, their well-being relies on you having a massage every week for a whole year. Would you do it? And of course, everybody says, of course they'll do it. That you will find the time and you will find the money to do it. So it's never about time and money. It's actually about whether or not it's a priority for you. Mm-hmm. So that's the mindset that I want to invite people to get curious about, because in fact, self-care isn't for the rich and famous. Self-care isn't for the person who loves themselves all up in a negative way. It's not for the person who thinks that they deserve to be cared for. It's for the person who actually really respects themselves and values who they are. So, and when I talk about it from that angle, of course we can all find the time and money. But then what I've loved to teach over the years is that self-care, as I said, can be what I call triple M's, micro moments, micro moments of mindfulness. So it could be as I'm making my smoothie, as I'm chopping that banana, I'm looking at that banana going, wow, that's an amazing piece of fruit. Look at the way it's sweet. It's this, and even doing that for 10 to 15 seconds is in fact meditation, because you are looking at something and being fully present to it. And then as I put my homemade almond milk in there and some ice, and then I might add in, a natural protein powder, or I might put in a scoop of collagen, or a scoop of gelatin, or a scoop of, maca powder. It might be anything of that. Or I might put in a handful of spinach leaves, or 2 drops of peppermint oil, whatever it is that goes into that smoothie. I'm really mindful of what I'm putting in there. That is an art. That is self-care in its absolute foremost, because you are really present to honoring feeding those beautiful 50 trillion cells that make up that exquisite thing we call a body. And when you feed it amazing nutrition, you know that those 50 trillion cells are working harmoniously at a homeostasis level, where they are operating and communicating and working together to make this vehicle the best it possibly can be. And we know when we look after ourselves with good nutrition, good sleep, helping get rid of sympathetic dominance, so we are helping the parasympathetic nervous system get out of fight and flight into a place of calm. We know when we do that, we are supporting the body to give its best, which means we're going to think clearer, we're going to be nicer, we're going to be more present to people that we love, we're going to have more to give. So self-care, I believe, is the foundation of a happy, healthy and vibrant life. Without it, we then have illness and disease, or mental stress, or relationship breakdowns, because we're not honouring this incredible thing we can call our temple or our body.
Absolutely. No, that's beautiful. Thank you. Wonderful. And the book does cover a lot, of your personal journey, and from the highs of setting world records and all sorts of stuff. For those of you who don't know, Kim did set a world record as the youngest female to run 100 miles in less than 24 hours, and then went on to represent the country in ultra marathon, wasn't it? I'm trying to get my terminology correct. So there has been, so many highs in your life, but you've also had your fair share of lows as well, from financial loss to loss of family members, business challenges, like just about everything I think you've come across. Obviously with Jacob spurring on the creation of the book, the challenge of motherhood and all that sort of stuff. But having chatted to you a few times now, a common theme that I see that keeps coming up is your feelings of self-worth. So I was hoping you might be happy to share, I guess, your journey for discovering your self-worth, and how it was that you were able to come to realize your true potential and to really embrace it so you could thrive.
Thank you. Yes, well, I've learned that everybody has stories, everybody has struggle, and everybody has challenges. It's about how we rise from the ashes, how we preserve our own sanity and well-being as we're processing those tough times. And then how do we make them have meaning in our life, where they make us and help us become a better human being for it. And I guess for me, when I was in India, I had an opportunity to have a one-on-one with His Holiness, the 12th Khenting Taisatupa. And as I was sitting there with him, who is the education manager for all Tibetan Buddhist monks and works very closely with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and I asked him that. I said, why do we have to struggle? Why is it part of the human existence that everybody tends to get through or has to have tough times? And he just Oh, he sort of smiled. And he said, oh, darling, you know, the human spirit, the human body, the human person would never understand joy without struggle, would never understand the power of love without hate, would never understand the appreciation of high without having lows. How do we understand light without dark? It is the dichotomy, the extremes, the absolute polarities of life that give us meaning. And as I researched that later on, and particularly for the book, also realized that psychologists talk about the fact that we only ever really resonate and become fully present to negative experiences. We thrive on the joys of life, but it's when we get hit by a Mack truck, literally, in life, or when moments can take us or have us on our bathroom floor that literally bring us to our knees, that we really understand the joy of maybe even boredom and monotony, and the everyday, things that happen all of a sudden seem really pure and beautiful. But when we're in it, sometimes they can feel a bit monotonous or a bit ho-hum until you're taken to your knees. We also know that it's those moments on our knees, or what I call bathroom floor moments, that as we navigate through those, and as we come out of them, we realize that we've taken one on behalf of the team, if you like, so that instead of coming out bitter from that experience, we can come out a better person. And I personally know that through my hardships, I have learnt the art of empathy for other people's struggles. I don't just look at them and go, oh, you're a bad parent, or, oh, you're a useless partner. It's not that. It's, wow, what have you been through to experience that? Or, yeah, I understand. I can appreciate what it's like to have a marriage, nearly fall over, or to understand what it's like to lose every bit of the money that you've ever earned. How did I get up? And I think it was during one of my therapy sessions with my beautiful counsellor, who I talk about in the book, Jacqueline, who's French, and she was in her late 80s. And she said, we sat there, our marriage was on the rocks. I mean, as I said, Danny unfortunately had lost his beautiful sister to suicide. He was a former international cricketer. We'd lost all our money in a financial institution and a property deal that went wrong. I mean, if you can appreciate it for a man, what that would have been like. He was in a world of pain, and also has allowed me to share his story, lost himself in a world of alcohol and drugs. And through his pain, which I had no understanding of because he was away overseas so much, I got to appreciate that unless I walked through his shoes, I wouldn't really understand it. Now, that's not to say as his wife, I wasn't distraught and I didn't think our marriage was over and all of that. But when we were sitting there with a therapist, she said, look, my darlings, your marriage will never be the same. But if you work on yourself and you work on yourself, then your marriage could be better than it ever was. I think that stuck with me around helping us to get up and out and over this tough time. But also the fact that I was worried about my children, who were 10 and 11 at the time, because I was also trying to launch my business, and we'd just written another book at that time as well. And she also said, I want you to give it 4 seasons before you make any big decisions. And the reason why she said that was because she believed that we're all different in different times of the year. So some of us are great in spring, some of us are great in winter, some of us are better in summer, and some obviously better in autumn. And she thinks that every big decision should have that allowance of 4 seasons. And that stuck and resonated with me. And the other thing I said to her is, I'm worried about my kids, watching us lose all our money, our marriage is on the rocks, we've lost Danny's sister to suicide. Like, how do we get through all of this? And she said, my darling, your job is not to dump on your children. It's not to give them all the story, but your job is to show your children how to get through tough times. And that really struck a chord with me, because I thought, yes, they're going to have tough times. They're going to have really bad moments in life. So by God, I'm going to have to learn how to live through this, but to show them with courage, grace, dignity, and strength that you can get through anything. And that became my mantra, and that became my force of reason. And it has been, I think, all my life, is whenever I get knocked down, by God, you are not going to keep me down for long. I will have a pity party for a while. I may have a girlfriend turn up with a bottle of wine or 2. I might have... I might go and buy something I shouldn't have. I don't know. We have all these different ways of handling the stresses of life, but I'm also not going to be defined by those moments. And I don't want my children to see that you can be defined by anything. And that, if anything else, I learned that I'm not I am not me because of my husband or my children. I am me because of me. And being a mother and a wife and a friend and a daughter and a sister adds to the beautiful tapestry and richness of my life. But who I am and what I am is determined by how I handle the tough times, but also how I celebrate the joys of life. So, and I think my love of essential oils and my love of nature has been my constant throughout it all. And I think knowing that I could go and run a bath and put some magnesium salts and cry a million tears into that bath with my oils, or to know I could put a diffuser on to make us all feel good when we're all been crying, or to know that my son, when he was feeling so distraught, that I didn't have to tell him that I was putting on some oils that would lift his spirits, just put it on and told him and rubbed his feet with beautiful calming oils, just said to him, I'm here for you. You know, he didn't know that I had another level of healing that I was working with him on an energetic and physical level. Now, you don't have to be an aromatherapist to do that. You don't have to be a herbalist to understand the power of plants and nature. So just by going outside with bare feet, or you know, we're lucky we live on the Sunshine Coast, I can go and put my feet in salt water, or knowing that I could just walk outside and to the letterbox and take 3 deep breaths. And even if I'm crying, I can still do that. Better still, put a drop of lavender on a tissue and breathe that in while I'm doing it. I realize what I've taught myself is a whole lot of rituals to work through those tough times, because Jacqueline's other fine words were, you've got to feel it to heal it. And you know, most people, we're not taught how to feel those emotions. You know, we get angry, but then we don't know how to manage that anger, or we sulk, or we slam a door, or we yell, or we say things that we might regret. But you know, sometimes it's okay to feel those feelings. So my intent was, well, how do I teach us how to manage those emotions? Because we know when emotions are high, intelligence is very low. So we can't take it personally when someone's yelling at us. Their emotions are incredibly volatile. Yeah. But you're better off to understand, to just say, look, I understand you're really angry right now. I'm going to go and get you a glass of water or a cup of tea, or I don't want to be spoken to like this. Let's go and cool off. Now, as silly as that sound, or as simple as that sounds, it's silly. We don't do it. We get hooked into everyone's drama, and now I'm buying into your business, and now we're all in this, I don't know, it just becomes this big feud, which is also okay, because I truly believe in the imperfectly perfect life. But I think what I've come to discover is, through the circle of self-love, the art of self-care, doing small things, micro moments of mindfulness, and eating well, moving my body, and being kind to myself and others is the pathway back to self-love, and is going to be my navigation pathway to help me through this tough time. So it's not going to stop the pains. I'm not suggesting for a minute here that this pathway is going to stop you ever having a challenge in your life again. Absolutely not. Neither am I to say that my son will never go through another tough time, or my daughter won't be challenged. That's not true. But I do believe that every struggle and challenge that we have actually leads us into a greater capacity to love, and more empathy, and more understanding of this human existence, and an appreciation that struggles and obstacles are in fact our greatest teachers and lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. And earlier on, you were talking about, you know, making self-care and self-love a priority, like elevating it above, you know, having to do 10 loads of washing and all that sort of stuff, like making sure that you carve that time out for yourself. But one thing that I noticed in your book was the power of why, like finding your why, and why it is important for you to make it a priority.
Well, even if I had 10 loads of washing, rather than seeing that as, oh my gosh, I've got a whole day of washing.
Because I'm looking at 10 loads of washing right now. So.
Well, how do we turn an everyday routine into a ritual? Yeah. So for me, when I'm doing my day of washing, I will end up putting a couple of drops of lavender in the wash and just take a couple of deep breaths before I shut the lid. And now I've just done a little moment of a micro moment of self-care. Or I'll put the diffuser on while I'm cleaning the house, or I'll put a podcast on while I'm cleaning so I can listen and learn while I'm doing that. Or I will also look at my cleaning my house as an opportunity for an exercise, functional movement, working out. Yeah. So to me, every moment of every day is an opportunity for self-care. It's just turning our mindset and our perception of it being a routine into a ritual. So when I take a shower of the morning, or, my why, I'm having a shower to get clean, but no, I'm taking a shower to increase my vibrational frequency because I'm going to use my essential oils and doing a hair rinse, or I'm going to do a body boost ritual while I'm in the shower and use a body brush and loofah my body by putting a couple of drops of oil on it as well. I've now turned getting clean into a beautiful self-care ritual. It's not taking any more time, but it feels good, it smells good, and I feel like I've done something a little bit extra special for myself. So to me, essential oils are probably the biggest key of all, because you can use them in so many different ways. And because I've been an aromatherapist for 3 decades, they're just a way of my life. I can't imagine, there's not been a day gone by that I haven't used them. I cannot imagine life without them. So my why is always, yes, and I think we mentioned a little bit before, if someone was not well and depended on you having a massage to get well, your why just got really strong. Or if and your why, it could be that as a grandparent you want to be fit and strong as your grandchildren grow, or it might be as a parent you want to know that you're not exhausted yelling at your kids all day every day, because it's not that you're yelling at them that's the wrong thing, it's the fact that you're so exhausted that you have lost your emotional intelligence to not yell, and that is your exhaustion coming through, or the stress levels have just hit crescendos. So why is that? So I love the word why, because it's a curiosity. Why am I yelling? And all of us that are parents, or if we're in a relationship and we have said something bad or wrong or nasty, all of us will feel guilty for that when we sit back and reflect. So when we feel that, what I've done in the book is when we feel guilt or shame or worry or fear, I then looked at all the essential oils that have this amazing ability to support us through those feelings, which will fast track us back to self-love. So why is, you did right, Roxanne, it's a really important part of self-care. And if you don't have a strong why as to why you need to look after yourself or why you're not doing, then you're probably not doing it.
That's it. And so obviously you've got a really strong message there for everyone, but how is it that you are spreading the word to get people more self-aware, to the self-awareness is the first key into the circle of self-love. So is it, what is your best way that you are connecting with people to spread this message? Is it through your podcast? Is it doing your live speaking engagements, or all of the above?
I think so. Look, people say 10 years hard work and you're an overnight success. So many people are coming into the wellness platform, and more people are selling oils, or more and more people are talking gut health, and then people get worried about what to do for a business or how to do it, and they're not as good as this person, and that person's got 20,000 followers and this one's got 100,000 followers, and it's so competitive and confusing, and it's tough. But I say this to anybody aspiring, there's enough for everybody, and it's just doing what feels natural. Now, I have given talks to one person. I've turned up to do an event and there's one person at the house where I've turned up and there's meant to be 30 people. And I've sat there and I could say, oh my gosh, what a waste of time. I flew to Mackay to do this.
Oh, wow.
This is years ago. Yeah. And I sat there and she goes, I'm really sorry, but everybody said no, they couldn't come. And do you know what? In my head, I went, oh my gosh, what a waste of time. That was my first thought. And then I went, no, here's my opportunity to talk to one person. And I thought, you know what? She's going to get my undivided attention. So I spoke to her for an hour and a half, and she was so appreciative. She spent so much money buying oils and skincare. And all of a sudden it hit me that it wasn't about the numbers. It's about the quality. It's about what you can give. How do you serve another? So, if you want to turn your message and monetize it and make it into something that becomes your business, your vocation, well, that's very important. But perhaps don't get into comparing yourself to what others are doing. Just help one person at a time. When I started 9 years ago, I had a vision to be the largest aromatherapy company in the Southern Hemisphere. I had no idea about a company called doTERRA at that point.
Oh, no.
And I looked at it, and I'll be honest, a couple of years ago, I really questioned whether or not there was a place for me in this market, because you're talking $1 billion company as opposed to little old me. Now, I have a different strategy and a different way, but we're all passionate about essential oils. So none of us are wrong. We're just all doing it our own way. And I think the greatest advice I got was to stay in my own lane, do what I do best. And I think what I do best is as a speaker, even though it was my greatest fear when I was in my 20s, it's now become my greatest platform and something I really enjoy. I've spent a lot of money on training myself to be a speaker, and I've spent a lot of time doing talks to one person, and I've spoken to thousands of people in big audiences and get nervous at every single one. I get nervous at these things as well. I always do a little prayer before I do one of these, because I'm always nervous. So my dream was to be the largest aromatherapy company. When I got confronted with all the different aromatherapy companies out there, and not just doTERRA, but there's lots of beautiful companies and lots of us out there trying to spread the message of wellness, I sat there and thought, actually, my mission, if I can help one woman, one mum, realize the healing innate powers of something like lavender over an over-the-counter prescription medication, then I'm doing my job. Yeah. So I went away from wanting to be this big thing into just being the ripple effect. If I can touch one person, that might touch another person. If I can help one woman realize the powers of lavender in her home, then she might then teach her children to do the same. Yeah. So I've gone very, instead of being big, I'm not interested in being big. It's not about how many followers, or I just know the people, it makes me a bit teary thinking about it, but the people I touch, that's what matters. So it's because they also touch me. So every single person in my audience, or every person that watches this interview, or every person like yourself that's ever interviewed me and done a beautiful story for a paper or a magazine, then the person that reads that's the right person. It's not about trying to touch millions of lives. I think that can happen for people, and it's amazing if that happens. And I'm in awe of people that do that. But I keep reminding myself, my job, my mission is to support one person, help one home at a time, realize their powers and their innate ability to heal, and help themselves through the powers of nature, through the powers of incredibly good nutrition, through the powers of understanding things like gut health or the microbiome, or appreciating and respecting chemical load in the home, environmentally, and on our bodies. And if I can just do what I'm passionate about and what I can do from my perspective, then hopefully that might help one more person. And certainly being touched by things like suicide in our family, and losing all our money, and a marriage breakup that nearly occurred, and a son that got kicked out of school, and a daughter that's had to try and create a career with stress fractures, and all the things that we've had to deal with. Then if we can inspire as a family and as an individual someone else to know that they can get through that, then I truly believe my job is done.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's incredible. And I honestly think that you're kicking goals well and above that already. You've touched way more than I would even say thousands of lives over the years. So you're a real inspiration for a lot of people, Kim. So
thank you.
Well, thank you again so much for your time. It's been a real honour to have this chat with you today, so thank you. So for those of you watching and listening at home, I will pop Kim's details below, her 28 website and other details there for you to link in. Get a hold of some of these beautiful essential oils and start making some change. And also get a hold of The Art of Self-Love. It is an amazing book, and it's one that I think you'll keep by your bedside table for forever. So thank you so much for bringing it into the world, Kim. It's been amazing.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you. Thank you for the work you do. You're such an incredibly giving soul. And I think for those of us that are a part of your world, also feel incredibly grateful for helping us to spread the message too. So thank you.
You're very welcome. That's beautiful. Thank you. I'm getting all flustered. Thank you. So everyone watching and listening at home, if you wanted to make sure that you like and subscribe the page, we'll continue bringing you lots of amazing men and women like Kim to give you a spot of inspiration and help equip you with some tools to overcome your life's challenges. So thank you again so much, Kim. Have an awesome day.
Thank you.